Thomas Dulomore says he was cheated by Ennis, and we're going to get into what is next for Ennis at this point. Let's talk about it in this video. King Jr. got another video for y'all. So we got some news here that a couple days ago, Thomas Dulomore recently fought Ennis after being brutally knocked out by Ennis. And he says that he was cheated because Ennis hit him in the back of the head or something like that. Well, first of all, Ennis clearly hit you right on the side towards the eardrum. It looks like it was in the back of the head, but he really didn't hit you in the back of the head. You was just getting hit with a punch that you know you ain't used to getting hit with. And Ennis has power to crack. I'll give you a prime example. When there was no audience in the crowd when he fought Sergey Lipinets, you could actually hear the bombs, the punches that Ennis was throwing on Sergey Lipinets, and it was like bop, bop, man. Like he was throwing some serious power down. And Ennis has a lot of power, and Ennis probably has one of the most craziest switch-up games from orthodox to southpaw, and you just couldn't keep up Thomas Dulomore. But anyway, let's get into what was next for Boots Ennis at this point. I think Ennis, he wants Errol Spence Jr., he wants Terence Crawford, he wants Keith Thurman. So we can already mark out Keith Thurman because Keith Thurman said he didn't even know who the guy was. Keith Thurman, you know who Boots Ennis is. You just don't want to fight him because you know you'll lose. But anyway, Ennis, in my opinion, would not be able to fight Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. because promotion problems. There's a dude by the name of Cameron Duncan, I believe that's his name, and I believe he's promotion of Ennis. And I don't think that he'll be able to do good business with the PBC or Top Rank because I believe a while ago Terence Crawford was with Cameron Duncan as well, and they was not getting along. So I don't know if we're ever going to see that fight between Terence Crawford and Ennis because there's not a mutual relationship barrier there, and we don't know if we're going to be able to see that fight between the two. Now, the only one that would probably give him a shot is Errol Spence Jr. I'm just going to say this right now. Ennis can give anybody a problem at the welterweight division, in my opinion. He's a stellar fighter. He's going to be causing a lot of problems in this division. It's just a matter of time. And he's already has like 28 fights, 26 wins by way of knockout. It's just going to be hard for this guy to get fights because nobody ain't going to want to see him to fight him. Now, I have to bring this point up. I have to say it. This is for the diehard boxing fans who rock with Spence. I rock with Spence. But shout out to Stormy B-Man. Stormy B-Man stated that yesterday he was on Drew Titan's channel, and he says that Ennis could knock out Errol Spence Jr. within 5 to 6 rounds if it goes the distance. Well, he brought up an interesting point by saying that Errol Spence wouldn't be able to keep up the foot speed of Ennis because sometimes Errol Spence gets the tendency to stay flat-footed sometimes and stay too long in a pocket and wait for a punch. And Stormy B-Man also stated that Errol Spence wouldn't be able to see a punch from Ennis because he punches so fast and quick. Now, I don't know if I can agree with that if he knocks out Errol Spence, but we have to see the fight. We have to see if Ennis beats Errol Spence Jr. or knocks him out. Well, this is my take on the whole situation. I actually have Errol Spence Jr. beating Ennis by a decision. a gruesome decision, because I feel like that this fight is going to go like the fight between Roberto Duran and Davey Moore. Roberto Duran was the huge underdog in that fight, and everybody thought that Davey Moore was going to just school Roberto Duran, and this was a much older Roberto Duran, and Roberto Duran said, "Look, I'm not going to let this young kid take what I got," and so Roberto Duran schooled him. We could see Spence beat Jaron Ennis, but it's hard to say that Jaron Ennis can knock out Errol Spence, because Errol Spence does have a tendency to have a chin, but Errol Spence doesn't have the natural attributes that Jaron Ennis has in a way. Well, what I'm talking about is the height and reach. Jaron Ennis basically have a 74-inch reach, and he's 5'10". He's a very big welterweight. This dude can go all the way up to 168 to 175 if he really wants to. He can dominate and be, a 6th division champion. That's if he gets the fights, though. But I don't see Jaron Ennis going up that high. I think Jaron Ennis might stop at 160. I don't see him going to 168 or 175. But if he decides to do it, it'll be towards the end of his career. But I don't see Errol Spence Jr. getting knocked out by Jaron Ennis. I don't see that happening because of the skill set Jaron Ennis has. But the only part that worries me is Errol's foot speed sometimes, because Errol has great footwork, he has great lateral movement, but sometimes he gets too comfortable in that pocket and sits there and try to work with you on the body. Well, he has to do it because he has a shorter reach, and I can understand that. But if you find a guy like Jaron Ennis, you have to use some lateral movement. You have to get in and get out. You have to put on a boxing clinic, work the body, and get out, because you don't want Jaron Ennis teeing off on you. Now, there are some points that Jaron Ennis, I believe he doesn't like fighters that gets in his chest as well, because we've seen Thomas Dulomore hit Jaron Ennis flush twice on the chin. And, Jaron Ennis' chin is granted. And, Jaron Ennis does have to tighten up on his defense a little bit, because there are some shots that Jaron Ennis, he sees the shots, he's just not covering up as well. So there's a lot of flaws that could go wrong in the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Jaron Ennis if that fight ever come to fruition. But shout out to Stormy B-Man for his opinion and breaking it down. He believes that Jaron Boots Ennis can knock out Errol Spence Jr. Well, he can. I mean, we got to see it. We got to see if the fight's going to happen. But I just don't have Jaron Boots Ennis knocking out Errol Spence Jr. Now, if he does, that's a major statement. But we have to see where Jaron Boots Ennis can get these big fights, because you have Virgil Ortiz that's number 1 in the WBC. He's number 4 in the IBF. I believe he's number 1 in the WBO, and I believe he's up there in the WBA as well. I believe he's number 3 or 2 in the WBA. So you have Virgil Ortiz, this guy's just getting blown up too fast in the divisions. And you have Jaron Ennis at number 3 in the IBF. Now, Abu Gakarev guy, he's probably not going to take a step aside money or anything to give Jaron Ennis a shot at Errol Spence Jr., because that guy's looking to make $1 million. So, I mean, why would he take step aside monies to let Jaron Ennis fight Errol Spence Jr.? I think Errol Spence Jr. would give Jaron Ennis a shot. I think it's going to be at 154. And like Errol Spence Jr. says, he's not looking for mandatories or anything like that right now. He's looking for the big fights. He's looking for the belts, the big champions. And maybe if Errol Spence Jr. gets all the belt at 147, if that happens, maybe we could get a title fight between Jaron Ennis and Errol Spence Jr. at 154. That's going to be a very interesting fight. Errol Spence is probably going to be at the prime of his career around that age, and Jaron Ennis is going to be well seasoned. And this is interesting. I think the fight's going to go well, but Virgil Ortiz is being pushed like he's this megastar already, and I don't understand that. And Virgil Ortiz, I mean, they climbed this dude up super high in the divisions, and to believe me or not, I think Errol Spence Jr. schools Virgil Ortiz. He's not ready for Errol Spence Jr. He hasn't been moved properly. He's been moved properly. He's just not ready skill wise. They're only teaching Virgil Ortiz offense, and they're really not teaching him defense. If he gets in the ring with Errol, he's going to get pieced up, and because he doesn't have the experience or skill set to face Errol Spence Jr. Now, Jerron Ennis, he has 28 fights. Errol Spence has 27 fights. Jerron Ennis has been in some fights, but he hasn't been in wars. So that's why I say Errol Spence Jr. beats Jerron Ennis because of experience and because of wars he has been. We haven't seen Jerron Ennis fight a top welterweight. And the hardest welterweight he fought was Sergey Lipinets, who lasted 6 rounds. Now, some people even say that Terence Crawford could give Jerron Ennis some problems as well because of Terence Crawford's style. Now, Terence Crawford does have powers in both hands, and he can crack you as well. And if Jerron Ennis fights Terence Crawford, he can get knocked out as well because Terence Crawford has power in both hands and Jerron Ennis has power in both hands. And both guys can switch from orthodox to southpaw, but Jerron can do it more fluidly than Terence Crawford, and Jerron Ennis can do it like you wouldn't even think this guy switched. But that would be a very interesting fight. The only difference is Terence Crawford and Jerron Ennis, they both have the same arm reach. They're just different in height. 5'10", Crawford's 5'8", Jerron's 5'10". So that would be an interesting fight. But I can see Terence Crawford having a easier time with Jerron than Errol, because Errol will have to find his way on the inside. That's the thing about it. You know, I want to know what will be Errol Spence's game plan to beat Jerron, because he's bigger, has a longer reach, he has power in both hands, and he can break you down as well. Now, the only downfall with Jerron is I don't think he can fight that well on the inside. He can fight well if somebody's coming in on the inside, but I don't think he can bang on the inside like Errol can do. And so that's why I said this is going to be an interesting fight between Jerron Ennis and Errol Spence. Jerron Ennis put on everybody on notice he's coming. And, you know, the closer we get to see Jerron Ennis fight these guys, the more that people's going to want to talk about this fight between Jerron and Errol Spence Jr. or Terence Crawford between Jerron Boots Ennis. And you can just basically throw the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. out the window, because if this kid gets number one in one of these sanctioned bodies, they have no choice to fight him. I think that Jerron is going to take over the division sooner or later. So if Errol Spence really wants to be the man, he's got to go after Jerron Ennis right now before he gets too good and Errol Spence is not going to be able to handle this kid, because Errol Spence is climbing up in age. Terence Crawford's really up there in age. Terence Crawford, I didn't even notice, he's 10 years older than Jerron. So Terence might not even fight him. Errol Spence, he needs to fight him and get this kid out the way. Because if I was Errol Spence Jr., I would be doing everything I can to stop this kid right now while he's hot. Because if you don't, he's going to get better and better and better, and it's going to be much harder to beat. But with that being said, it is what it is. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. This is your boy King Jr. I'm out of here. Peace.